Director Sarah Chen sat in the same uncomfortable chair she had occupied for the past 3 years. The Galactic Council chamber stretched before her like a cathedral of alien architecture, all flowing curves and impossible angles that made human eyes water if stared at too long. Around her, representatives from 200 species murmured in languages that her translator earpiece rendered into flat, emotionless English. She had learned to smile through these sessions. Smile and nod. Agree and accommodate. It was what Earth did best, or so the galaxy believed. The matter of System J447 is concluded, announced High Arbiter Veloth, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence across his scaled face. The Valorian Empire's claim predates the human survey by 17 standard cycles. The system remains under Valorian jurisdiction. Chen's smile never wavered, though her assistant Marcus Webb tensed beside her. They both knew the truth. Earth's survey had been filed properly, stamped and verified. The Valorians had simply submitted a backdated claim 3 months ago, and the Council had accepted it without question. Earth recognizes the Council's wisdom, Chen said, her voice carrying the same pleasant tone she always used. Beside her, Admiral Kovacs made a sound like grinding metal, but he stayed silent. This was the 50th decision that had gone against Earth in as many months. 50 times humanity had presented legal claims, trade disputes, or requests for protection under galactic law. 50 times the Council had ruled in favor of the older powers. The galaxy had 3 real rulers, regardless of what the Council's charter claimed. The Valorian Empire controlled military might, their warships older than human civilization and numerous enough to darken stars. The Syndicate Collective owned the trade routes and financial networks that made modern galactic commerce possible. And the Keth Ascendancy held the keys to advanced technology, their scientists having perfected arts that humanity was only beginning to understand. Everyone else, including Earth, simply existed in the spaces between these giants. You should have objected, Kovacs muttered as they walked down the crystalline corridors after the session. The Admiral was a thick man with gray in his beard and fire in his eyes. He had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 12 years and had grown increasingly frustrated with diplomatic limitations. To what end? Chen asked. They would have ignored us anyway. Then why are we even here? Chen stopped walking and turned to face him. Around them, aliens of various species moved past, some on legs, others floating, a few that defied easy description. None paid the humans any attention. They never did. We're here to watch, Chen said quietly. To learn. To understand exactly how far they'll push us. And how far is that? We're about to find out. System J447 wasn't just any system. It contained rare Earth elements that Earth desperately needed for its growing fleet. More than that, it was a matter of principle. If humanity couldn't defend a legal claim to an uninhabited system, what could they defend? Chen had known this moment was coming. They all had. Back on Earth. The politicians, the military planners, the scientists working in facilities that didn't officially exist. 50 years of patience was about to end. That evening, Chen returned to the human embassy, a modest building that looked like a gray box compared to the soaring spires that other species maintained. She dismissed her staff and entered her private office, engaging security protocols that would have impressed the Keth themselves. Then she recorded a message. Director Chen to Earth Command. Authorization Chen 77 Alpha. Diplomatic protocols have reached their functional limit. The Council has officially sanctioned Valorian seizure of System J447, despite clear legal precedent in humanity's favor. This represents the 50th significant ruling against Earth interests in the past standard year. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. In my assessment, we have gathered sufficient intelligence on Valorian military doctrine, Syndicate economic structures, and Keth technological principles. Further diplomatic engagement will yield diminishing returns. The galaxy views humanity's patience as weakness. It is time to correct this misperception. Another pause. This was the moment that would change everything. Requesting authorization to proceed to Phase 2. Protocols suspended. Let them see what we've really been doing for 50 years. She ended the recording and encrypted it with codes that would take the Keth 1,000 years to crack using their best computers. Then she sent it through channels that the Syndicate didn't know existed. The response came back in 40 minutes. A single word. Granted. Chen allowed herself a real smile for the first time in months. The next morning, She received news that a Valorian battle group had entered System J447. 15 warships, each one large enough to be seen from a planet's surface. They were claiming the system with overwhelming force, making it clear that humanity's legal claim meant nothing compared to Valorian steel. They're not even being subtle about it, Webb said, reading the reports. They're basically daring us to respond. Then we shouldn't disappoint them, Chen replied. Ma'am, our nearest ships are 3 light-years away. By the time they arrive, the Valorians will have established fortifications. Our nearest official ships are 3 light-years away, Chen corrected. That's different. Webb's eyes widened slightly. The Ghost Fleet? There is no Ghost Fleet, Chen said primly. According to our official records, Earth maintains exactly 47 military vessels, all accounted for in various defensive positions around Sol System and our 3 colony worlds. Of course, ma'am. My mistake, and however, if certain mining consortiums and independent explorers happen to be in the area, well, we can't control where private citizens choose to travel. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. They were very good at keeping secrets. While the Council had been dismissing Earth's complaints and the great powers had been ignoring humanity's quiet expansion, humans had been busy. Every diplomatic slight had been recorded. Every Valorian military transmission they could intercept had been analyzed. Every piece of syndicate financial data they could access had been studied. Every Keth technology demonstration had been reverse-engineered. 50 years was a long time. Long enough for humanity to build things in the darkness between stars. Long enough to develop technology that combined the best of all 3 powers with humanity's own innovation. Long enough to go from newcomers to something the galaxy had never quite seen before. That night, Chen stood on her embassy balcony, looking up at the alien sky. Somewhere up there in System J447, the Valorians thought they had won another easy victory. They were about to discover their mistake. Were we really just being polite? Webb asked, joining her on the balcony. Chen thought about that. About 50 years of patience. About every dismissed complaint and ignored treaty. About the careful, deliberate choice to learn before acting. Yes, she said finally. We were being polite. We were giving them every chance to treat us fairly, to recognize us as equals, and now they'll learn what happens when humans stop being polite. In orbit above the embassy, a satellite activated systems that had been dormant for years. Across human space, ships that officially didn't exist began moving toward System J447, and in laboratories on Earth and Mars and Europa, scientists made final checks on weapon systems the galaxy had never imagined. The age of human patience was over. The age of demonstration was about to begin. Chen smiled at the alien stars and went back inside to prepare. Tomorrow, the Valorians would engage what they thought was a small human defense force. Tomorrow, the galaxy would begin to understand that Earth's politeness had never been weakness. It had been reconnaissance. Commander Thex of the Valorian Empire stood on the bridge of the warship Eternal Dominance and felt utterly confident. Behind his ship, 14 more Valorian vessels hung in the void, their weapons charged and shields active. Ahead lay System J447, and somewhere in that system a handful of human ships that would soon learn their place. Scanners detect 4 human vessels, reported his sensor officer. Frigate class. No capital ships. Thex clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. 4 frigates against 15 battle cruisers. The humans weren't even trying. Have they hailed us? He asked. Yes, Commander. Standard diplomatic protest. They claim legal jurisdiction and request we withdraw. How polite of them. Ignore it. Proceed to claim the 3rd planet. That's where the mining operations will begin. What Thex didn't know was that 50 years ago, when humanity first encountered the Valorian Empire, they had been terrified. Valorian ships were massive, powerful, and backed by centuries of military tradition. Human vessels had seemed like toys in comparison. So humanity did what it always did when faced with a superior force. They studied, they learned, and they adapted. The first human observers had been diplomats and scientists, carefully watching Valorian fleet movements during training exercises. The Valorians, secure in their superiority, had never bothered to hide their tactics. Why would they? What could primitive humans do with such knowledge? Everything, as it turned out. Every Valorian engagement was recorded and analyzed. Human computers studied their formation patterns, their response times, their communication protocols. When Valorian ships stopped at human stations for supplies, Human technicians carefully scanned their hull compositions, their energy signatures, their shield frequencies, and humanity learned. The same thing happened with the Syndicate Collective. While human merchants appeared to struggle in galactic markets, they were actually mapping every trade route, every financial connection, every economic pressure point. When syndicate negotiators condescended to explain basic economics to ignorant humans, those humans nodded politely and memorized every word. The Keth ascendancy was harder. They guarded their technology jealously and rarely explained anything. But they liked to show off. During technology exhibitions and scientific conferences, Keith researchers would demonstrate their latest achievements to impress the lesser species. Human scientists attended every single exhibition. They took notes. They asked simple questions that made the Keth laugh at human ignorance. And then they went home and spent decades figuring out how those impossible technologies actually worked. Now, in System J4047, Commander Thex was about to receive humanity's final exam results. "Commander, the human vessels are approaching," his tactical officer reported. "They're not running." "Foolish," Thex muttered. "Perhaps they want to make a brave last stand." "How noble. Target the lead ship. Fire a warning shot across their bow." The Valorian warship unleashed a plasma bolt that could vaporize a small moon. It streaked through space toward the human frigate and missed. "Recalibrate targeting," Thex ordered, frowning. Valorian targeting systems were perfect. They didn't miss. "Sir, the human ship moved before we fired. They predicted our targeting solution. That was impossible, unless they had access to Valorian military computers, which was unthinkable. The Keth themselves couldn't crack Valorian encryption. All ships open fire. Overwhelming force. 15 Valorian warships unleashed enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma torpedoes filled the void between the fleets. The 4 human frigates danced through the barrage like they knew exactly where each shot would be before it was fired. Because they did. 50 years of studying Valorian tactics meant human computers could predict their every move. But prediction alone wouldn't win this battle. The Valorians had numbers and firepower. So humanity unveiled its first surprise. The human frigates fired back with weapons that shouldn't exist. Missiles that split into dozens of submunitions, each one independently targeted. Energy beams that shifted frequency mid-flight to match Valorian shield resonance. And something new. Something the Valorians had never seen before. "Commander, our shields are destabilizing." Thex stared at his displays in disbelief. Human weapons were adapting in real time, learning from each impact, adjusting their properties to exploit weaknesses they discovered. This was Keth-level technology, but faster, more aggressive. How are they doing this? The answer was simple. Humanity had taken Valorian durability, syndicate efficiency, and Keth adaptive systems, then combined them with something the galaxy's old powers had forgotten about: innovation. While the ancient civilizations had spent millennia perfecting what they already knew, humanity had spent 50 years combining everything they learned into something entirely new. They had no traditions to uphold, no established doctrines to follow. They were free to experiment, to fail, to try impossible things, and some of those impossible things worked. "All ships, concentrate fire on a single human vessel," Thex ordered. Even with their tricks, humans couldn't withstand focused bombardment from 15 capital ships. The Valorian fleet executed the maneuver perfectly, their formation shifting with practiced precision. Every weapon locked onto the nearest human frigate. The frigate's shields held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. But in those 3 seconds, something strange happened. The other 3 human ships suddenly became much harder to hit, as if they were sharing data faster than light speed, which should also be impossible. Quantum entanglement, it turned out, made excellent communication systems when you understood it properly. The Keth knew about it theoretically. Humans had weaponized it. The concentrated bombardment destroyed the human frigate in a brilliant explosion. Thex felt a moment of satisfaction. Then 12 more human ships appeared from behind the system's asteroid belt. Where did they come from? Thex demanded. "Unknown, sir." They weren't there a moment ago. Actually, they had been. They just hadn't been broadcasting any signals or showing up on sensors. Stealth technology that the Syndicate Collective used for surveillance. Improved with material science that humans had developed themselves. Refined through trial and error that the older races never bothered with anymore. The new human ships weren't frigates. They were something else, something that didn't match any known classification. They moved with impossible agility for their size, their weapons systems making the frigates look like toys. "Retreat," Thex ordered, his confidence evaporating. "Reform at the jump point." The Valorian fleet began withdrawing in good order, their training showing through panic. They were the greatest military force in the galaxy. They didn't run from anyone, but they were running now. The human ships pursued but didn't destroy. They disabled weapon systems. They crippled engines. They made it clear with every shot that they could have destroyed the Valorian fleet entirely but chose not to. Thex's ship made it to the jump point with 6 others. 8 Valorian warships remained behind, drifting and helpless, their crews alive but their pride shattered. As the Eternal Dominance entered hyperspace, Thex received a transmission on all frequencies. A simple message in perfect Valorian language. "Tell your council. Earth tried diplomacy. For 50 years we were patient. We were polite. We followed your rules and accepted your decisions. Now you will learn what happens when humans stop being polite. This is not a war. This is a demonstration. We are not your enemies, but we will never again be your victims." The message was signed by someone called Admiral Kovac. Back in System J447, the human ships began rescue operations for the disabled Valorian crews. They provided medical care, comfortable quarters, and perfect courtesy. And while they worked, more human ships arrived. Not dozens, hundreds. Ships that officially didn't exist, appearing from locations that shouldn't be possible, carrying weapon systems that combined the best of 3 galactic powers with 50 years of human innovation. The galaxy was about to learn something important. When humans said they were being polite, they meant it. And when they stopped being polite, they didn't become violent monsters. They became something far more dangerous. Competent. Commander Thex's report reached the Valorian High Command within hours. Similar reports came from syndicate trade convoys that suddenly found human ships controlling strategic routes. From Keth research facilities that discovered their most secret projects had been replicated by human scientists. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were called. Representatives who had ignored Earth for 50 years suddenly demanded answers. And Director Chen, still smiling that patient smile, prepared to give them one. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 200 species shouted in languages that overwhelmed even the most sophisticated translators. At the center of the storm, High Arbiter Veloth pounded his gavel repeatedly, his 3 eyes blinking in distress. "Order. This council demands order." Director Sarah Chen sat in her uncomfortable chair, hands folded in her lap, that same pleasant smile on her face. She had waited 50 years for this moment. She could wait another few minutes for the shouting to stop. Finally, the chamber quieted enough for Veloth to speak. "Director Chen, this council demands an explanation. 8 Valorian warships were disabled in System J447. The Valorian Empire claims this was an unprovoked attack." Chen stood slowly, smoothing her jacket. "With respect, High Arbiter, Earth's claim to System J447 was filed properly and legally. The Valorian incursion was illegal under the very laws this council claims to uphold. Our forces acted in self-defense." "Self-defense?" The Valorian representative, a scarred warrior named General Crax, slammed his fist on his podium. "You ambushed a peaceful security patrol with weapons that violate multiple technology treaties." "Which treaties?" Chen asked mildly. "Please cite the specific regulations we violated." Crax opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth was that no treaties existed limiting human technology development because no one had believed humans were capable of developing anything worth restricting. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "our forces took great care to disable your ships without casualties. All Valorian crew members were rescued, treated with respect, and are being returned to your territory as we speak. If we had hostile intent, we could have simply destroyed your fleet." The chamber fell silent at that. The implications were clear and terrifying. "This is madness," hissed Counselor Sheth of the Keth Ascendancy. Her crystalline body flickered with agitated colors. "Humans are barely a century in space. Your technology should be primitive. Where did you acquire adaptive weapon systems? Quantum communication networks? Stealth capabilities that surpass our own?" Chen's smile widened slightly. "We developed them, Counselor. You see, for 50 years, Earth has been attending your technology exhibitions, participating in scientific conferences, and observing your military exercises. You were very generous with your demonstrations. We learned a great deal. You stole our technology. We observed publicly displayed information and developed our own solutions to similar problems. There's a difference. Every piece of data we used was either publicly available or obtained through legal means. That was technically true. The galaxy's old powers had been so confident in their superiority that they had never bothered to hide anything from the primitive humans. After all, even if humans knew how Keth computers worked, they couldn't possibly replicate them. Except they had. This is unacceptable, declared Minister Rex of the Syndicate Collective. The economic disruptions alone are intolerable. 16 of our major trade routes are experiencing technical difficulties that only human contractors seem capable of repairing. Are we to believe this is coincidence? Chen pulled out a datapad and began reading. Let me see. The Syndicate Collective has filed 1,700 complaints with this council over the past 50 years. Would you like to know how many came from Earth? 3,247. Trade sanctions, arbitrary inspections, discriminatory pricing, routes blocked for spurious safety concerns. This council dismissed 98% of our complaints. She looked up, her smile gone now. So yes, Minister Rex, it's quite a coincidence that your trade routes are experiencing problems. Almost as much of a coincidence as all those problems Earth's merchant fleet experienced for 5 decades. The difference is that we can fix your problems. Whether we choose to is another matter. The chamber exploded again. Accusations flew like weapons. Earth was threatening galactic stability. Earth was acting like a rogue state. Earth needed to be controlled before they disrupted the carefully maintained balance of power. Chen waited for the noise to die down, then activated her datapad. The chamber's main display lit up with documents, thousands of them, each one carefully organized and indexed. This is a complete record of every decision this council has made regarding Earth in the past 50 years, she said quietly, but her voice carried through the suddenly silent chamber. Every legal claim we filed that was dismissed. Every treaty violation against Earth that was ignored. Every time we followed your rules and received nothing but contempt in return. She gestured and the documents began scrolling past. The representatives watched, many seeing the full picture for the first time. We came to you 50 years ago with hope, Chen continued. We believed in galactic civilization. We believed that law and reason would prevail. We were wrong. This council doesn't serve justice. It serves the powerful. You dare, Veloth began. I dare because Earth no longer needs your permission, Chen interrupted, her voice sharp now. For 50 years we were the model galactic citizen, polite, patient, accommodating. And what did it get us? System J447 is just the latest in a long series of thefts legitimized by this council. She paused, letting that sink in. Earth has 2 demands. First, this council will reform its structure to include genuine representation based on merit and population, not age and military strength. Second, all past decisions made in violation of the council's own laws will be reviewed by an independent body that includes species currently excluded from power. Preposterous, General Krax roared. You're one species among hundreds. You don't dictate terms to the galaxy. Chen smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. General, your fleet learned something in System J447. Let me be clear about what that lesson was. Earth doesn't want war. We don't want to conquer anyone. But we will never again accept a galaxy where might makes right and the law only applies to the weak. And if we refuse your demands? Asked Counselor Sheth coldly. Then we'll build an alternative. There are hundreds of species in this galaxy who have suffered under your system. Species this council ignores because they lack military power or economic leverage. They're tired of being ignored. Earth has been talking to them. That caused another explosion of shouting. The 3 great powers had maintained control precisely because the lesser species were divided and weak. If Earth was organizing them, you're threatening galactic war, Veloth shouted. No, Chen corrected. We're offering galactic reform. War is what you'll get if you choose to maintain an unjust system through force. But let me be very clear about something. She leaned forward and every being in the chamber felt the weight of her words. If you choose war, you will lose. Not because we're stronger than you, though our recent demonstrations suggest we might be. You'll lose because your civilizations are old and rigid. You've spent millennia perfecting what you already know. You've forgotten how to adapt, how to innovate, how to change. Humans have been in space for 80 years. In that time, we've gone from chemical rockets to ships that can match your best. Why? Because we never stopped learning. We never stopped trying new things. We never stopped believing we could be better. She straightened. So here's the truth. We were polite for 50 years because we hoped you would do the right thing. You didn't. Now we're done being polite. We're not being violent. We're not being destructive. We're simply being honest. This council will reform or it will become irrelevant. Choose quickly. Earth is patient, but our patience has limits. With that, Chen bowed respectfully to the chamber and walked out. Behind her, the council descended into chaos. The Valorian Empire demanded military action. The Syndicate Collective wanted economic sanctions. The Keth Ascendancy proposed a technology blockade. But beneath the shouting, a cold fear was spreading. Because everyone in that chamber knew the truth, the humans weren't bluffing. They had spent 50 years being polite while building an alternative to galactic order. They had combined the strength of all three powers with their own innovation. And most terrifying of all, they had allies now. The ignored species, the dismissed complaints, the desperate pleas that the council had brushed aside for centuries. All of those species had been watching System J447. They had seen what happened when someone finally stood up to the old powers, and they were ready to stand with Earth. That night in a secure facility on Earth, Admiral Kovacs met with Chen via quantum-encrypted communication. How did it go? He asked, as expected. They're outraged, defensive, and scared. Will they fight? Chen sighed. The Valorians definitely will. The Syndicate will try economic warfare. The Keth will attempt to subvert our technology. They're forming an alliance as we speak. Good, Kovacs said grimly. We're ready, Chen nodded. They had known this moment would come. The old powers would never surrender their control peacefully. But humanity hadn't prepared for peace. They had prepared for war. Not because they wanted it, but because they knew that sometimes changing the galaxy required breaking a few rules, and humanity had always been very good at breaking rules. The combined fleet hung in space like a dark constellation. 3,000 warships from 3 galactic powers who had never before worked together. Valorian battlecruisers with their blood-red hulls. Syndicate dreadnoughts bristling with purchased weaponry. Keth science vessels converted to war platforms, their crystalline structures glowing with barely contained energy. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. And it was pointed at Sol System. Admiral Marcus Kovacs stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Defiance and watched them come. Around him, his bridge crew worked in focused silence. No one was panicking. They had prepared for this moment for 50 years. How many? He asked quietly. 3,047 ships confirmed, his sensor officer replied. Valorian contingent is largest, but all 3 powers are fully represented. They're maintaining formation at the system's edge. Have they hailed us? Yes, sir. General Krax is demanding our immediate surrender. He's giving us 1 hour. Kovacs smiled without humor. Generous of him. Send our response. Tell them we decline. The message went out, and the combined fleet's response was immediate. They began their approach, moving in perfect formation. Whoever had planned this operation understood coordination. The 3 powers might hate each other, but they hated the idea of human independence more. Sir, they're moving to envelopment pattern, his tactical officer reported. Classic siege formation. They're trying to surround the entire system. Let them, Kovacs replied. How long until they're in position? 4 hours at current speed. Good, that gives us time. Begin Phase 1. What the combined fleet didn't know was that Earth had spent 50 years preparing Sol System for this exact scenario. Every asteroid had been charted. Every planet's orbit had been calculated to the millimeter. Every piece of space debris larger than a fist had been tagged and tracked. Sol System wasn't just humanity's home. It was the most thoroughly surveyed, carefully planned, and heavily defended location in the galaxy. The fleet continued its advance, sensors sweeping for mines, weapons platforms, and defense stations. They found some exactly where they expected to find them, standard defensive positions around Earth, Mars, and the larger moons. What they didn't find were the thousands of objects that looked like ordinary asteroids but were actually weapons platforms. They didn't detect the satellites that appeared to be commercial communications arrays, but held military-grade targeting systems. They missed the defense drones hiding in Saturn's rings, powered down and waiting. Humans had learned from the Syndicate Collective how to hide things in plain sight. From the Keth Ascendancy, they had mastered stealth technology. From the Valorians, they had discovered the value of overwhelming force held in reserve, and they had added their own twist. Patience. Enemy fleet entering weapons range in 30 minutes, the tactical officer announced. Very well, Kovacs said. Open a channel to all Earth forces. Authorization Kovacs Delta 9. Release the hounds. Across Sol system, thousands of hidden weapons platforms came online simultaneously. The combined fleet sensors suddenly lit up like a festival, showing threats from every direction. What is this? General Krax demanded on his bridge, staring at tactical displays that showed impossible numbers. They've militarized their entire system, his sensor officer reported in shock. Every asteroid, every satellite, every piece of orbital infrastructure. It's all armed. The combined fleet's advance halted as commanders tried to process what they were seeing. This wasn't a military base. This was an entire solar system converted into a fortress. It doesn't matter, Minister Rex of the Syndicate transmitted. We have numbers. We have firepower. One system cannot stand against 3,000 ships. But the combined fleet's intelligence had been based on observation of human forces in other systems. No one had actually surveyed Sol System's defenses because no one had imagined Earth would dare fortify its home so aggressively. It seemed like paranoia. It turned out to be preparation. All ships begin bombardment, Krax ordered. Overwhelming firepower. Sweep their defenses clear. 3,000 warships opened fire. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma torpedoes filled the void. It was enough firepower to crack planets, to boil oceans, to end civilizations. And humanity's defenses swallowed it like an ocean absorbing raindrops. The hidden weapons platforms didn't just defend. They counterattacked with systems that learned from each incoming shot, adapting in real time. Asteroid fortresses revealed themselves to be mobile, shifting position faster than sensors could track. Earth's defensive network acted like a single organism, components sharing data through quantum links faster than the enemy could react. Sir, we're taking significant losses, a Valorian officer reported. The humans are targeting our weapon systems specifically. They're not trying to destroy us, that was true. Every human shot was precisely calibrated. Disable engines, knock out weapons, cripple shields, but leave life support intact, leave the crew alive. It was somehow more terrifying than simple destruction. This is impossible, Counselor Sheth transmitted from her Keth command vessel. How did they build all of this without us knowing? The answer was simple. They had built it slowly, carefully over 50 years. Every piece of civilian infrastructure had a military purpose. Every commercial station could become a weapons platform. Every mining operation in the asteroid belt had been preparing defenses disguised as resource extraction. While the galaxy had been ignoring Earth as a minor power, humanity had been turning its home system into an impregnable fortress. But hardware alone wouldn't win this battle. The combined fleet still had numbers, experience, and raw power. What they didn't have were allies. Admiral, new contacts, the sensor officer suddenly announced. Multiple fleets emerging from hyperspace at various vectors. Kovacs allowed himself a small smile. Right on time. Identify them. Sir, I'm reading Denari ships, Tellan vessels, Carix carriers. There are hundreds of them, from at least 40 different species. The combined fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded. While they had been advancing on Earth, other species had been moving into position. Species that the great powers had dismissed as too weak, too primitive, too poor to matter. Species that humanity had been quietly arming, training, and organizing for decades. This is Director Chen to all Allied forces, a transmission broadcast across all channels. The Galactic Council has refused peaceful reform. The old powers have chosen violence over dialogue. Today we show them that their age is over. She's been planning this. General Krax breathed in horror. All of it. The diplomatic protests, the patient submission, the careful recording of every crime. They were building a case. And an army, Minister Rex added grimly. The combined fleet was now caught between Earth's fortress system and a coalition fleet that outnumbered them 2-1. Ships from species that had spent centuries being bullied, exploited, and ignored. Ships crewed by beings who had finally found someone willing to stand with them. All fleet defensive formation, Krax ordered. We're withdrawing to... Sir, the humans are hailing us. Admiral Kovacs. Krax hesitated, then opened the channel. The human admiral appeared on screen. looking remarkably calm for someone whose species faced extinction moments ago. "General Krax," Kovac said politely, "I'm going to offer you something my government very much did not want me to offer. I'm going to give you a choice." "You're in no position to offer anything," Krax growled. "Really? Because from my tactical displays, your fleet is surrounded, outgunned, and about to be systematically dismantled. But here's what you don't understand about humans, General. We don't want to destroy you. We never did." Kovac leaned forward. "You see us as young and reckless. We see you as old and brittle. There's a difference between strength and violence. We'll show you. What are you proposing? Stand down. Withdraw your fleet. And when the dust settles, sit down with us and build something better. This galaxy doesn't need rulers. It needs partners. And if we refuse," Kovac's expression hardened, "then we'll disable every ship in your fleet, rescue every crew member, and send you home in escape pods to think about your choices. We have the capability. System J447 was a demonstration. This is the reality." Around the combined fleet, Allied vessels moved into position, not attacking, just waiting, showing their strength without using it. On his bridge, General Krax made the hardest decision of his military career. He looked at his tactical displays, at the impossible numbers, at the perfect coordination of forces that shouldn't be able to work together, and he saw something he hadn't expected to see. Mercy. Power held in check. Strength used to protect rather than destroy. "All Valorian vessels stand down," he ordered quietly. "Weapons safe, shields to minimum. We're withdrawing." One by one, the other powers followed. The Syndicate Collective's dreadnoughts powered down their weapons. The Keth science vessels dimmed their energy cores. The largest fleet in galactic history was surrendering without a real battle being fought. "Wise choice, General," Kovac said. "Now comes the hard part. Building what comes next." As the combined fleet began its withdrawal, Director Chen stood on Earth watching the stars. Beside her, Marcus Webb looked stunned. "We won," he said softly. "We actually won." "No," Chen corrected. "We survived. The real work starts tomorrow." Because defeating the old powers had been the easy part. Building a better galaxy, 6 months had passed since the standoff at Sol System, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Director Sarah Chen walked through the reconstructed council chambers, noting the differences. The old building had been too small for what the council was becoming. The new facility was larger, brighter, and designed to accommodate hundreds of species who had never before had a voice in galactic affairs. The chairs were still uncomfortable, though. Some traditions died hard. "Director Chen," a young Denari approached, her 4 eyes bright with nervousness. "I wanted to thank you. My people have been trying to join the council for 200 years. Without Earth's support, we would never have been heard." Chen smiled warmly. "Your people earned their place. We just helped remove the obstacles." It was true. The old council had been designed to exclude rather than include. Membership required sponsorship from existing members, substantial economic leverage, or significant military power. The Denari had none of these things, despite being one of the more numerous species in the galaxy. The new council operated on different principles. Population, technological contribution, and commitment to galactic law all factored into representation. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what had existed before. "The session is beginning," Marcus Webb said, approaching with a datapad. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Chen replied. "How are our former friends doing?" Webb grimaced. "The Valorian delegation is still angry. The Syndicate is trying to negotiate trade advantages. The Keth are surprisingly cooperative, though I think they're planning something." That matched Chen's expectations. The 3 former powers hadn't given up their influence easily. They had fought the reforms, tried to bribe smaller species, and attempted to maintain their old networks of control. But they were learning that the galaxy had changed. The session opened with High Arbiter Veloth, who had somehow managed to keep his position despite everything. He was a survivor, Chen had to admit, adaptable enough to change with the times. "The Council recognizes General Krax of the Valorian Empire," Veloth announced. Krax stood, looking older than he had 6 months ago. The humiliation at Sol System had cost him dearly within Valorian hierarchy, but he had survived by becoming a voice for accommodation rather than confrontation. "This council will address the matter of trade route security," Krax began. "Valorian forces have traditionally provided protection for commercial vessels throughout our sector. We request clarification on how this responsibility will be handled under the new structure. Minister Rex of the Syndicate Collective immediately stood. The Syndicate already provides private security services. There is no need for military involvement. Before Chen could respond, a Tellan representative stood up. With respect, both Valorian and Syndicate services have proven unreliable for smaller species. We propose a joint security force with rotating command and transparent oversight. The old council would have dismissed such a proposal immediately. A Tellan suggesting military policy? Unthinkable. But now dozens of species voiced support. The idea wasn't coming from one of the great powers. It was coming from the species who actually needed protection. An interesting proposal, Chen interjected. Earth would support such an initiative, with the condition that all participating species have equal voice in security decisions. Krax started to object, then stopped. He was learning. The Valorian Empire can accept these terms, provided our military expertise is properly recognized. It was a compromise. Not perfect, but functional, and it was happening through dialogue rather than diktat. The session continued for hours, addressing dozens of issues that had been ignored for centuries. Trade disputes between minor species, border conflicts that the old powers had never bothered to resolve, technology sharing agreements that didn't favor the Keth exclusively. It was messy, it was loud, it was democracy. That evening, Chen met privately with representatives from the three former powers. She had requested the meeting, and despite their reluctance, they had agreed. The Valorians had learned respect. The Syndicate had learned that Earth controlled too many critical resources to ignore, and the Keth had learned that human innovation was too valuable to alienate. Thank you for coming, Chen began. I know these past months have been difficult for all of you. Difficult? Counselor Sheth's crystalline body flickered red. You've dismantled systems that worked for 10,000 years. You've given power to species that have no idea how to use it. You've created chaos. We've created change, Chen corrected gently. And yes, it's chaotic. But the old system wasn't working. Not for most species in this galaxy. It worked for stability, Minister Rex argued. The galaxy was at peace. The galaxy was controlled, Chen replied. There's a difference. But I didn't ask you here to argue about the past. I asked you here because we need your help. That surprised them. General Krax leaned forward. What kind of help? There's a situation developing in the Outer Rim. Long-range sensors have detected unusual activity. Ships from outside known space. Possible first contact with unknown species. The three representatives exchanged glances. This was exactly the kind of situation where the old council's structure had excelled. Quick decisions, coordinated military response, clear chains of command. And your new Democratic Council is too slow to respond, Sheth said with satisfaction. You're learning the costs of your reforms. No, Chen said quietly. We're learning how to do things better. But that means learning from experience, including yours. The Valorian Empire has 10,000 years of military tradition. The Syndicate Collective understands complex logistics. The Keth Ascendancy's exploration protocols are unmatched. She paused. We don't want to replace you. We want to work with you. As partners, not subjects. Rex laughed bitterly. Partners? You defeated us. You humiliated us. And now you want to be friends? I want to build something better than what existed before, Chen replied. Look, I understand you're angry. You had power and we took it away, but we didn't take it for ourselves. We spread it around. And that benefits everyone, including you. How? Krax demanded. Because you're free now, Chen said simply. Free to innovate without maintaining control. Free to excel at what you do best without needing to dominate everything. The Valorians can focus on military excellence without needing to bully smaller species. The Syndicate can build trade networks based on mutual benefit. The Keth can pursue knowledge without hoarding it. She leaned forward. You spent so much energy maintaining power that you stopped growing. We didn't defeat you because we're stronger. We defeated you because you forgot how to adapt. Silence filled the room. The three representatives sat with that truth, uncomfortable as it was. This unknown contact, Sheth finally said. What do you propose? A joint mission. Valorian military escort. Syndicate logistics support. Keth scientific expertise. And human coordination. We show whoever's out there that the galaxy can work together. And if they're hostile, Krax asked, then we face them together. The galaxy has changed. We're not three powers and hundreds of vassals anymore. We're a community. Still learning how to function, still figuring things out, but together. The meeting ended without firm commitments, but Chen could see the shift. The old powers were beginning to understand that they had a place in the new order. Not the place they had before, but perhaps a better one. 2 weeks later, the joint mission launched. It was imperfect, full of friction and disagreement. Valorian commanders chafed at taking suggestions from Talon officers. Syndicate negotiators struggled with transparent accounting. Keth scientists had to explain their work to oversight committees. But it worked. The unknown ships turned out to be an exploratory fleet from a distant sector, looking for trade partners. The joint mission made first contact peacefully, established communication protocols, and began preliminary trade negotiations. It was the first time in galactic history that first contact had been handled by a coalition rather than a single power. And it set a precedent. 3 months after that, Chen stood on the lunar surface watching construction crews work on the new Joint Species Research Station. Humans worked alongside Keth scientists, Valorian engineers, and dozens of other species. They were building humanity's gift to the galaxy, a place where anyone could come to learn, to innovate, to create. A young Carix approached, his 6 legs moving carefully in the low gravity. "Director Chen, I'm researcher Vex. I wanted to ask you something." "Of course. Why did humans do all this? You had power. You defeated the greatest military force ever assembled. You could have ruled." Chen smiled, looking up at the Earth hanging in the black sky. "Because ruling wasn't the point. We didn't want to be in charge. We wanted to be free. And we realized the only way to be truly free was if everyone else was free too." "But you were being treated unfairly," Vex insisted. "You could have just taken revenge." "Revenge would have made us like them," Chen replied. "Power without restraint is tyranny. We wanted to prove that strength means protecting others, not dominating them. We were polite for 50 years because we hoped the galaxy would choose to change. We fought because it refused to. And now we build together." She turned to face the young researcher. "That's the